maybe this is my misunderstanding, but it's if you get contacted by an officer, are you legally objected or obligated to provide them with your name, birth date, or address?
Under the failure to ID, if they have actually told you that you are under arrest, then you are required to provide them with name, address, and date of birth. However, there is no requirement that that be done in physical form. Verbal is all that's required. When you are legally detained, you do not have to provide it to them, but you cannot provide them false information under either of those conditions, which again would be another example of why producing a license could count against you. Texas has a statute that makes it a crime if you've moved to a new address and haven't updated that address on your license. Now, let's say that you've recently moved. You haven't changed the address on your license, but you're outside of their so-called 30-day window to make that change. By producing that license and handing it to the officer, you've now given him evidence to charge you with another offense, failure to change the address on the license. But at the same time, without thinking about it, you just recite the old address, and now you've provided false information under the failure to ID statute, and now you're in a lot more trouble. So the simple production of that license gave him the opportunity to maybe charge you with 2 additional criminal acts.
So if I pull you over and I ask for your license, you're saying you don't have to supply that?
If I invoke my right to remain silent, how can you force me through statute to produce something that you have just said you can use against me in a court of law, or that can potentially incriminate me in some way? What Texas has actually done in that regard is criminalize the invocation of a protected right to remain silent. They will charge you with failure to produce a license if you don't produce one. But at the same time, your right to remain silent prevents them from being able to do that, because that license can be used to charge you with something else.
Okay. Now, Eddie, we're running out of time here, so I just want to ask you a question, moving away from the vehicles. Okay, so let's say you're out, you're walking around, you see the police initiating a traffic stop or some type of thing. So you pull out your camera, you walk up and you start to film the police. Are you in any type of violation of any law, ordinance, or anything just to film a police officer?
As of this moment, no. As long as you aren't close enough to actually physically impede or endanger the officer in any way, which the courts have set a limit of approximately 15 feet.
Okay.
Anything within that, you could be considered physically interfering. But you cannot interfere verbally, and you cannot interfere simply by recording unless you've exceeded that safety width that they've set up. So anything beyond that 15 feet is just the officer trying to exert his power unreasonably. He wants to control the scene. He wants to control the suspect. He doesn't want to have to worry about a bystander. All of that is viable in a manner of speaking. But at the same time, the way they're being trained and the way they're being taught, that camera is an accountability they don't want present. If they can get you to move without having to force you to move, that's what they'll do. The case of Antonio Bueller is a perfect example of an officer abusing the authority.
And for people who aren't familiar with Antonio, he was filming, I believe it was a young lady who encountered the police. The officer said he was pretty much too close to the scene, and then he was subsequently...
There were actually 2. It was on New Year's Eve, I believe, and Antonio was taking a friend of his home. They had stopped to put gas in their truck, and the officers had 2 females pulled over in a car. One of them was out for a sobriety test. The other was still in the passenger seat. The lady in the passenger seat was yelling out the window to her friend not to submit to the sobriety test.
Right.
The officers then tried to charge her with interfering, came over and drug her out of the car. And from the pictures that Antonio took, it was very easy to see they were intentionally inflicting joint pain pressure techniques on her to get her to comply with what they were doing. They were assaulting this woman. And because they were armed, it's aggravated assault. And Texas statutes deal specifically with public servants that commit aggravated assault while displaying a deadly weapon. But in all of Texas, up until the officer in San Antonio assaulted that female college student and broke her teeth out on the curb,
I remember that.
No police officer in Texas has ever been charged under the aggravated assault statute.
Wow.
That was the very first one, and that statute's been on the books since 1965. So that should tell you something about how often these officers commit these acts, but never get punished for it.
Yeah, now, Eddie, I'm going to extend this a little bit because I want to ask you a question. When you want to get your footage from the police officer, let's say you were contacted by a police officer, you have dash cam, whatever. I have personally tried, both as just a person and as a journalist, go down to APD to get footage for something. And it's this ring around, I go in, I submit an official request as a journalist requesting footage of X, and then I call up and it's like, well, you can't have this footage because this case is currently under investigation. I go talk to the party involved. They say, no, I settled my case, I paid all my fees, and they still refuse to produce said footage. What is somebody supposed to do?
Technically, that is a crime under the Public Information Act. 552.353 of the Texas Government Code makes that a crime. Public records are under all circumstances to be given to the public. The ones that are considered public information request material are the ones that are not specifically public record. Some of these you're discussing fall into that category. However, it's a typical ploy for delay and denial by both police agencies and prosecutors to misrepresent what they're doing. The statute very clearly says that in order for them to deny it in the case of an ongoing investigation, the production would have to directly interfere with their ability to either complete that investigation or to pursue that prosecution. If it would not interfere with it, they're not covered by that statute for non-production. Yet the only thing they're doing is filing with the Attorney General's office saying, hey, we have an ongoing investigation, and the AG just rubber stamp and saying, okay, then you don't have to produce it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, and the problem is that's criminal. Under that act, that is a crime, both by the AG's office and by that agency. But they do it all the time. So the way we do it here, if we want to do it correctly and make sure that we do it, is if you have a case, make sure you file a motion for discovery in addition to your public information request. And then if they fail to produce, you can file a motion to compel with the court demanding that they produce it for the purpose of discovery. The other thing the Act does not deal with specifically is when you are the defendant in the case and you are acting as your own counsel. In that case, you are every bit as entitled to that information as your defense attorney would be. And for them to withhold that is to withhold evidence in your case that you need to put on a defense with. That in and of itself is a crime. I actually read a letter that was sent to someone by a prosecuting attorney in Texas, and I could not believe what I was reading. This prosecutor was actually telling this gentleman that by choosing to represent himself, he had waived all of his rights to seek discovery, to get depositions, to get public information relating to his case, to seek records relating to his case. In other words, because you don't have one of our bar attorneys, then we can throw you under the bus and there's nothing you can do about it.
Wow.
That is the mindset of these so-called public officials. It's truly what they're teaching the officers is it is really an us against them thing. The problem is they've got the roles completely backwards. We're not the problem. They are the problem because they now consider themselves to be above the people and above the law that belongs to the people. It's unacceptable in my book.
Always interesting. Eddie Craig, Rule of Law Radio. Eddie, tell us your final thoughts and also how can people keep up with your work?
Well, we do our show on Monday night here in Austin from 8 to 10 p.m. My show is Monday nights, the Rule of Law Radio. We don't call it the traffic show anymore. It's just the Monday night Rule of Law Radio show. I also teach a due process seminar class every Sunday down at Brave New Books from 2 to 5 p.m. In which we openly invite, free of charge, any attorney and any law enforcement officer to attend that class. I will never charge an attorney or a law enforcement officer to come to that class. The whole reason for it is I would love for them to have the desire to know if they're doing right and wrong and to come in and see, because this is not my opinion that I give. Everything that I teach folks, I can show you in black and white where it's written into the statute, where it's written into the case law, and I can show you everything. I don't make this up. I work very hard to make sure it's true and accurate.
All right, thank you, Eddie. Always informative, and this is the type of stuff you get if you go to prisonplanet.tv. This is what funds our operation. It allows us to have guests on like Eddie so he can bring you these educational materials. All right, and be sure to tune in next week. We'll have that full presentation from Eddie that he's about to shoot for us right after this. I'm Jakari Jackson from the INFOWARS.com studio. Be sure to go to PrisonPlanet.tv, get yourself a free trial where you can see the Alex Jones Show, the nightly news, the special reports, the rants, all right there at PrisonPlanet.tv. Jakari Jackson from the INFOWARS Command Center, and we'll see you again tomorrow night.
From the water table to our soils to the atmosphere itself, our world is becoming more and more toxic each and every day. But it's not just the air outside that's toxic. Indoor air has been shown to have 2 to 5 times higher concentrations of pollutants than even outdoor air. And most Americans spend 90% of their time inside using toxic chemicals within their homes. There are more than 42 million smokers in the United States. Well over 1,000 types of mold and mildew linked to numerous conditions. And don't forget the fact that 6 million Americans live with pets they're allergic to as well. When I began to research these statistics, it was clear to me it was time to start cleansing my lungs in order to combat the toxic environment that we cannot escape, but that we can fight back against. Made with organic and wild cultivated herbs and manufactured in the USA, the new INFOWARS Life Lung Cleanse is here in a convenient spray bottle that can be brought with you throughout any toxic environment. Now available exclusively at INFOWARSLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
Is there any security footage of any of these explosions?
We are looking at all of that right now. That's one of the investigative steps that we're taking.
Was there any prior knowledge of? Because according to BostonGlobe.com, they said they were doing drills this morning for the same exact thing that happened, according to BostonGlobe.com. Now, was you guys given any warning ahead of time of this taking place?
As I said earlier, there was no specific intelligence. We certainly increase our posture around a big event like this. All of those things happened in preparation for this event, but there was no specific intelligence that anything was going to happen.
And can you talk a little bit about what type of device do you have?
The City of Boston is open and will be open tomorrow, but it will not be business as usual. There will be a heightened law enforcement presence consistent with the severity and seriousness of the ongoing investigation. People should expect those who are riding the T, that there will be random checks of backpacks and other parcels. And we just ask everyone to be patient with that inconvenience for the time being. It is for the public's safety. Here in the state, at the local level, and at the federal level, we are all coming together to do everything we can to get to the bottom of this.
The most important fact that I want to convey to everybody this evening has already been mentioned by Governor Patrick. The FBI is taking the lead in this investigation. It is asserting federal jurisdiction. It will do so through the Boston Joint Terrorism Task Force, members of which are comprised by all the members of the law enforcement agencies here represented at the podium. This will be a combined federal, state, and local effort. It will be an ongoing investigation. It is a criminal investigation that has the potential, is a potential terrorist investigation.
Do you take any questions?
Oh, sir, why were loudspeakers telling people in the audience to be calm moments before the bomb went off? Is this another false flag stage attack to take our civil liberties and put more homeland security sticking their hands down on the pants on the streets?
No. Next question.
You have said that there's no suspect, but is there?
I'm not going to confirm that right now. We'll have that information for you first thing in the morning. The medical people are compiling that as we speak.
Again, why were speakers telling people to be
characterizing the act of terrorism?
Extent of the injuries, how serious people are.
This is a very powerful point. Right now, that area that the governor outlined is our main point of focus right now.
Again, why were people telling speakers telling people to be calm before the bomb went off? I want to answer that question.
Currently in your search for additional devices, are you searching the entire route of the marathon, or are you focused on certain areas right now? Are there specific areas that you're focused on beyond the Copley area?
At this point in time, our focus of the investigation is in the area that the governor mentioned.
Why was people being told prior to the bomb going off?
Are there any unaccounted for people? If so, how would you?
We're actually working very closely with the families right now. We're setting up a location near here that families can come to if they have any questions. The mayor's office has fielded many calls of concern. We're going through those right now.
Okay, thank you. Unidentified.
That's it.
Why was people being told prior?
9:30 tomorrow morning.
Why was people being told prior to the bombs going off to stay calm? That's a false flag, gentlemen. Just to put more TSA on the street to rob our civil liberties.
You are watching the INFOWARS Nightly News, which airs 7 p.m. Central at INFOWARSnews.com. And your support is helping us defend liberty worldwide.